my daughter-in-law threw away Grandpa's last gift, then discovered what was hidden inside. My name is Robert Mercer, and 3 months ago, I watched my daughter-in-law throw away the most valuable thing my late father had ever left behind. Not because she was angry, not because she hated me, because she thought it looked cheap. The worst part? She had absolutely no idea what was hidden inside it. Neither did my son. Neither did anyone else in that room. And by the time the truth came out, the entire family was forced to confront something far uglier than a mistake. They had to confront what happens when people start measuring value by price tags instead of meaning. To understand what happened, you need to understand my father. Because this story isn't really about a blanket. It's about a man who spent 30 years preparing a gift for a grandson he would never meet, and a family that nearly threw that gift into a garbage can. My father, William Mercer, wasn't a wealthy man. He wasn't famous. He wasn't the kind of person people noticed when he entered a room, but he was the kind of man who quietly changed lives. He worked as a mechanic for 42 years. Same garage, same toolbox, same coffee mug, same work ethic. The kind of man who believed promises mattered. The kind of man who fixed things instead of replacing them, including people, especially people. When my mother died, he raised me alone, never complained, never asked for sympathy, just showed up every day and did what needed to be done. That was who he was. Years later, when I got married and eventually had a son named Ethan, my father became obsessed with one idea: someday being a grandfather. He talked about it constantly. Fishing trips, baseball games, teaching life lessons nobody asked for, terrible jokes, endless stories. The man was already planning memories for a child who didn't exist yet. Unfortunately, life doesn't care about plans. Dad died 11 months before Ethan's wife announced her pregnancy. A massive heart attack. One ordinary Tuesday, one phone call, one hospital room, and then he was gone. Just like that. The house felt empty afterward, too quiet, too still. Anyone who has lost a parent understands that feeling. You keep reaching for the phone to call them. Then you remember. And it hurts all over again. About a week before he died, Dad handed me an old wooden box. A box I'd seen sitting in his closet for most of my life. I always assumed it contained receipts or photographs. I was wrong. Inside were dozens of savings bonds, neatly organized, labeled by year, some dating back almost 30 years. At the top sat a note written in his handwriting, "For my first grandchild." I remember staring at it, confused. Dad smiled. Then he explained, every birthday, every Christmas bonus, every extra paycheck, every good year. He bought another bond, a little at a time. For nearly 3 decades, he had been saving money for a grandchild long before he knew if one would ever exist. I asked how much it was worth. His answer stunned me. Just under $50,000. Not enough to change a life, but enough to start one. Then he told me something else, something far more important. There was a letter, a handwritten letter, for his future grandchild. A letter to be opened at age 18. His final message, his final advice, his final piece of himself. He looked at me from his hospital bed and said something I'll never forget. Don't just hand it to them. I asked what he meant. He smiled. Hide it somewhere meaningful. Make them discover it. Make them appreciate it. Make it last. Those were among the last clear instructions my father ever gave me, and I promised him I'd do exactly that. After his funeral, I spent months thinking about how. Eventually, I decided on something simple, a handmade quilt. My wife had passed years earlier, but she had taught me how to sew. Not professionally, just enough to create something meaningful. So every night after work, I sat at my kitchen table and worked on that quilt. one square at a time. Blue and white patterns, small fishing boats, little details Dad would have loved. It took nearly 4 months. More than once I considered giving up. Not because it was difficult, because grief makes everything difficult. Every stitch reminded me he wasn't here. Every square reminded me he would never meet the child he had saved for. But I finished it, and hidden inside the quilt lining was a carefully sewn pocket. Inside that pocket sat the savings bonds, the letter, and 30 years of a grandfather's love. Then came the baby shower. My daughter-in-law Madison loved appearances. Everything had to look perfect. Perfect photos, perfect furniture, perfect social media posts, perfect image. The baby shower looked less like a family gathering and more like a luxury product launch. Designer decorations, professional photographer, custom desserts, expensive gifts stacked everywhere. I showed up carrying a simple wrapped box. No fancy logo, no expensive branding, just a handmade quilt. I should have recognized the warning signs immediately. The moment Madison saw the gift, I noticed the expression, that subtle look people get when they think they're being polite while silently judging something. She opened the package, pulled out the quilt, held it up, and frowned. Not dramatically, just enough. Then she laughed. A small laugh, the kind that tells everyone else how they're supposed to react. "Oh," she smiled. "It's homemade." The room laughed, not loudly, just enough. Enough to hurt. I remember standing there thinking she simply didn't understand. I started to explain. I started to tell her there was something important hidden inside. But before I could finish, she walked toward a trash can, still smiling, still performing for the room, still playing to the cameras. Then she said 6 words I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. "We only use designer things here." And she dropped it into the trash. The quilt, the bonds, the letter, my father's final gift, gone, straight into the garbage. The room laughed again. Some people awkwardly, some genuinely amused. Nobody stopped her. Nobody objected. Nobody moved, including my son. And somehow that hurt more than anything else, because Ethan knew what that quilt represented. He didn't know what was inside it, but he knew who made it. He knew why it mattered, and he still said nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I didn't expose the secret. Instead, I walked over quietly, reached into the trash, picked up the quilt, folded it carefully, placed it into my bag. Then I left. No speech, no argument, no tears, just silence. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept thinking about Dad, about those 30 years, about how easily people discard things they don't understand. When I got home, I placed the quilt on my kitchen table. Then I waited, because I knew eventually someone would realize what happened. I just didn't know how soon. The phone rang 2 hours later. It was Ethan. His voice sounded wrong, shaky, panicked, like something terrible had happened. "Dad," I knew immediately. Someone had told him. "What was inside the quilt?" I sat down, looked at the folded fabric on the table, and answered honestly. "Your grandfather's savings bonds." Silence. Then I continued. $48,000. More silence. "And a letter." His breathing changed. I could hear it, the realization hitting him, the memory replaying inside his head, watching his wife throw it away, watching everyone laugh, doing nothing. Then came the question, the one that broke me. "Dad, do you still have it?" I looked at the quilt. Yes. A long exhale. Then I heard my son crying, not quietly, not politely, actually crying, the way grown men cry when they realize they failed someone they loved. I didn't stop her. "No." "You were right there." Yes, I didn't stop her. For the first time in years, Ethan stopped making excuses, stopped avoiding conflict, stopped choosing comfort over principle. And that was the moment everything changed. The next week, I arranged a family dinner. Everyone came. Madison, Ethan, Madison's parents, a few relatives, everyone. The quilt sat in the center of the table, waiting. dinner was uncomfortable. Everyone knew why they were there. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Finally, I stood, placed the quilt on the table, and opened the hidden seam. One by one, I removed the contents. First, the bonds, then the letter. The room went silent. I explained everything. 30 years of savings, my father's dream, his final wishes, the amount, the purpose, the sacrifice. Nobody spoke. Madison looked physically ill. Then came the letter. I didn't read the entire thing. That belonged to the child, but I read enough. Enough for everyone to understand. Enough for everyone to hear my father's voice one final time. By the end, several people were crying, including Ethan. Madison wasn't crying. She was staring at the quilt, like she was seeing it for the first time, which, in a way, she was. Eventually, she spoke. And, predictably, her first response wasn't an apology. It was a defense. How was I supposed to know? Wrong question. The correct question wasn't, how was she supposed to know? The correct question was why she assumed it had no value in the first place. That was the lesson, not the money, not the letter. The assumption, the belief that expensive means valuable, the belief that handmade means worthless, the belief that appearance equals importance. That belief nearly cost her son his inheritance. After that dinner, I made a decision. The money would still go to my grandson, exactly as Dad intended, but not directly. I created an education trust, locked, protected, untouchable. The money belonged to the child, not the adults, not the parents, not anyone else. My father saved it for his grandchild, so that was where it would stay. Months have passed since then. The trust remains intact. The letter remains sealed, waiting for the day my grandson turns 18. The quilt eventually found its way into the nursery, not because I forgave easily, because the child deserved it. As for Madison, she changed. Not overnight, not completely, but enough. A few weeks after everything happened, she asked me something unexpected. Would I teach her how to sew? I said yes, not because she earned forgiveness, because people only learn when someone gives them the opportunity. The first thing we made together was terrible, crooked, uneven, messy, but she kept it, and that mattered. Ethan changed too, more than anyone. For the first time in his life, he started speaking up, started defending what mattered, started choosing difficult truths over comfortable silence. Dad would have liked that. Maybe that was part of the inheritance too, not the money, the lesson. Because here's what this story was really about. A handmade quilt, a trash can, a grandfather's love, and a family forced to learn that the most valuable things in life rarely arrive with designer labels attached. Sometimes they're hidden inside ordinary things, waiting for someone wise enough to look deeper. And sometimes, the difference between losing everything and preserving something priceless is simply knowing what deserves to be protected.